Guys, this is Whoop with Whoop's Garage, and today I want to talk about what it's been like owning a third-gen Tacoma for the last 9 to 10 months. So, about 9 to 10 months ago, I decided that after dealing with our tired 7.3 truck and knowing that we were coming into a Michigan winter and I was daily driving a Suzuki Cappuccino, that I was going to need something that was going to be somewhat reliable to drive every day, capable of driving every day, and also capable of actually moving stuff and doing things when I needed it done, because we, like I said, had too many issues with our 7.3 diesel. Enter our 2019 third-gen Toyota Tacoma. Now, this ended up being my dream spec Tacoma. And so when I found it, I knew I needed to have it, so I flew to Virginia for it. I picked it up in Arlington and then drove it to Virginia Beach, where I hung out with a friend for a little bit, and then drove from Virginia Beach back up to Detroit. Ended up being kind of a fun experience, and it was the first road trip we took in this, and it was a road trip in it of itself, which was kind of fun. Is like the second time I think I'd ever actually really done something like that. Drive was pretty uneventful for the most part. We did have our flight delayed on the way down, and but by the time we were on the way back, it was pretty uneventful until about the last half of it. It was coming through Pennsylvania, and a truck had overturned inside one of the tunnels, and so they blocked off the tunnels, and I had to take like 80 miles of back roads behind a bunch of semi-trailers that were also forced to take the same back road. So that part was a little bit of a nightmare. It added like 2-3 hours to my trip. I'd like to mention exactly why I chose this truck. This truck, like I said, is the dream spec Tacoma for me. If I was ever going to buy a third-gen Tacoma, I knew I needed just a few things out of it. What are those things, you're probably wondering? Well, one, it needed to be Calvary Blue, because Calvary Blue is probably one of my absolute favorite colors to come out of Toyota, probably ever, let alone the last decade. So that was a must. If I was going to get one, it was going to have to be Calvary Blue, and I don't think I'd settle for anything else. Second thing I wanted was the 6-speed. So guys, yeah, exactly. This is a 6-speed manual, and so more often than not, when somebody asks me about this truck, they're pretty much always taken aback that this is a manual. I know manuals are pretty rare for these, but I just felt like I had to have one. Not even on like a manual elitist thing, because honestly, I don't really care about all that too much. But for towing, I thought having a manual would be ideal, just off the fact that I could leave it in third gear if I need to, or I could drop a gear a little bit more easily. I know sometimes automatic transmissions, especially when you're towing, like up a grade or something like that, they don't always make the best choices, or they sometimes like to sit in a higher gear, or they're just not always the best. Even on a lot of these newer trucks, they sometimes struggle with different things like that. And my whole reason for getting this truck was really having something that was going to be super stout, super reliable, super functional. And in having that, and having the capability of having like a manual like this, if worst case came to be and I killed a clutch or something like that, towing a car to who knows where, because I was going to go race or something like that, absolute worst case scenario is I could change the clutch out on this in a parking lot. I could drop the transmission and actually change that, or slave or something like that myself. Whereas if I cook an entire automatic transmission, while I can R&R a whole transmission in a parking lot, kind of going to be a little bit harder to diagnose, be a lot more expensive to replace an entire transmission. Whereas like more often than not, if a transmission issue occurs in here, it's probably just going to be a clutch issue, and that's something I could just probably order and have drop shipped to me and, you know, dealt with in a day or two. Versus if it's a full automatic transmission, then I've got a truck with a trailer and all this extra stuff with me, and now I got to figure out how to get it home, get it somewhere. And I just really don't want to deal with that. It's kind of something I figured out dealing with the 7.3 and how often that broke, and especially how big the 7.3, F350 is. Dealing with a truck of that size and nature, if it breaks, it really complicates things, especially when you're, say, 1,000 miles away from home. I wanted to be able to have the most amount of functionality, the most amount of repairability, serviceability, and the most amount of reliability that I could potentially get, and I figured this was one of the best ways to get that. Now, one of the other things I'll mention is that I wanted this truck specifically because it's actually pretty low on options, and that might sound a little counterintuitive, but when you think about it in the sense of what I just talked about, having something that's, going to be reliable, easy to work with, easy to service, I really didn't want a lot of extra stuff on here, and I knew that eventually I will without fail, as I always do, start tampering with things. And when that happens, I know I'll be probably changing components. So I didn't need to go for like a TRD Pro or something like that, where I knew all of those bespoke components to that are something that I would end up changing out anyways. Really, all that's doing is costing me more money up front, and it really wasn't necessary. So this truck being a TRD off-road was kind of a good balance, because I knew I wouldn't throw a bunch of money at everything right up front, but I know over time a lot of things will get replaced, and I don't feel bad about replacing TRD off-road shocks at 100,000 miles with something substantially better. But if I was to replace TRD Pro shocks with something better at, say, 60,000 miles or 50,000 miles, it is kind of a little bit of a waste in my eyes. So I thought the best course of action was basically this, and me wanting things like a roof rack for a tent and things like that. I knew needing a sunroof wasn't going to be anything necessary. I've given you about all of the information as to why I needed and went with this truck. Now let's talk about how I actually feel about it after 10 months. As you guys can imagine, I feel pretty good. I put about 15,000 miles on it, driven for the last 10 months, and the only thing I've done has been oil changes. So it's been absolutely fantastic in that regard. It is probably gonna need brakes and tires and a couple other things soon, because those are pretty far gone. At least the tires are. The brakes might have a little bit of life left in them. But I plan on upgrading and doing those things anyways. If there's one part of this truck that I think is probably my biggest gripe, it has to be dealing with the actual gearing or combination in thereof of throttle mapping with this vehicle. If you don't understand what I mean when I say throttle mapping, I'm talking about, very specifically in this case, the tip-in. That's kind of like the latency on drive-by wire setups when you press the gas pedal versus how long it takes for the throttle body to actually open up and start letting air into the engine. In this vehicle specifically, the tuning on that from factory is not really ideal. In fact, I would almost propose that it's semi-dangerous, especially with the pairing of the gearing here. Now, I often find that if I'm like in, say, construction, stop and go traffic, that sort of thing, you're gonna be sitting in second gear, first gear, bouncing back and forth between those, and trying to be at the right speed, right? Because you're probably rolling at a couple miles an hour. But this truck really does not like to downshift into first. I know a lot of things are kind of like that, but this truck very specifically does not like going into first gear unless you are at a complete stop. You can almost never get away with downshifting into first. You're pretty much left with the choice of trying to take off in second, which is too tall. You're almost always gonna lug it, and it kind of just feels like shit to take off in. That is impartial due to the fact that you can get on the gas preemptively, but it still feels like it takes a little bit too much before it actually gets rolling. Now, that paired when you're trying to turn out of an intersection or pull out into traffic in any kind of matter, it really kind of sucks, because you will pull out and you think you're going to be on power, and sometimes you are on power. Sometimes it does kind of work semi-naturally, and other times it really feels almost like you have some kind of turbocharged engine under the hood that decides that it doesn't hit boost until 6,000 RPM, and you're just stuck there. So that is a very irritating experience that I've found myself driving this, that really frustrates me. Try and wrap up the footage in the office here because it is so noisy outside that I just know the audio quality from those last few clips is probably going to be absolutely disastrous. So aside from the poor throttle experience in this vehicle though, I have to say my experience overall has been mostly good. I really don't have too many complaints. Any complaints that I guess I would have are probably something kind of more of my own choosing, like not having certain features because I intended on adding them later. There's some things I would like maybe having a power locking tailgate and things like that I could have got if I had some of the expanded packages. But all those things aside, overall, the truck has been phenomenal, and the issue with the throttle mapping can fairly easily be solved via tuning and or adding, a supercharger or something like that from Magnuson. I really haven't had too many major issues with the vehicle aside from the throttle issue. I really do enjoy the truck a lot, actually. Like I said earlier in the video, I was actually cross-shopping this with a Ranger Raptor, and I was really close to actually just pulling the trigger on the Ranger Raptor because I'd done test driving in them for a while, and I was really excited about that truck. But when I started thinking about the potential of maybe running in a time attack circuit or doing more traveling, buying an Airstream, and all of these other things I want to do, I really thought about, needing the reliability of being able to tow those things consistently and not having issues. I really don't want to end up stranded 1,000 miles away from home or while I'm in the middle of doing something important. It would really suck to not be able to make it out to an event or just struggle to make it back home with something or whatever the case may be, even just facing an issue while traveling on vacation from work or something, right? So all of these are kinds of issues that I just didn't want to have to come across and I didn't want to have to deal with. So that is kind of what led into my final decision of choosing the Tacoma. And I think so far it's been a pretty good decision. And I hope you guys are excited to continue to see Tacoma content on the channel. I'm really excited about the truck. I do enjoy it a lot, despite it not being an unreliable vehicle like all the rest of the fleet is. But this has been a super fun vehicle to have, to be honest, because it does just start and it does just work. And it's not something I typically normally would buy. And that's why I think I really am going to try to go for putting 1 million miles on this vehicle. I know plenty of people have done 1 million miles on other vehicles, and then, it's a Toyota. I feel pretty confident in the fact that this thing will probably be able to handle that. I have no doubt that, there will be maintenance items needed along the way. But I do fully intend to put 1 million miles on this truck. To see that happen, you guys want to follow along with the build on the Taco and see everything that we get up to here at Whoop's Garage, then I hope you guys will subscribe down below. Do you think the truck's capable of making it to 1 million miles? Do you have a 3rd gen Taco? Is there complaints you have? And there's plenty of things I would like to do to it, and I will always be open to suggestions from everybody else on what you've done to improve your rig. Below, if you guys want to hear me yap even more, you guys can go down below as well to the links to the Zero Camber podcast. We upload every single Monday. An hour of all of the juiciest, funniest news that we could possibly put together that is automotive and somewhat not related. So thank you guys for watching today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know down below what your guys' thoughts are, and I will see you guys in the next one.
I got this girl and she wants me to duke her. I told her I'll come scoop her around 8. She said, Super. That sounds great. Shorty girl's a trooper. No matter what I needed to do, she'd be like, Wooper. On his own throne, the boss like King Cooper. On the microphone, he flossed the ring.